Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Sunlight Podcast. Today, I want to talk about mileage. This is the best tax deduction that people miss. So, because there's a tracking requirement for mileage, a lot of people don't bother doing it. And the fact is, mileage is one of these secret, superpowered deductions that you can get for your business. And it's worth it. And also the tracking that might feel intimidating to you is actually a lot easier these days than you probably think it is. So let's get you over the hump and let's get you this really awesome deduction. All right. So first of all, what is the mileage deduction? The mileage deduction is available to businesses. So that if you are filing a Schedule C for being a freelancer, for being self-employed, being a sole proprietor, then you are entitled to a mileage deduction. Now, it's important to note, this is for business mileage. It's not a deduction for personal mileage. Personal mileage is never deductible. It's also really important to note that business mileage doesn't include a commute. So if you have a studio or an office outside the home that you commute to do your work, that is not part of your deductible mileage. Commute is actually a personal expense. So that's really just kind of key understanding. I don't want you to accidentally include that in there. The thing about mileage is it's one of these expenses, and there's several others in the lexicon of deductions you can get in your business, where a small business typically is using the same car for both business purposes and personal purposes. And because it's not a simple deduction, if your car was owned by the business and you only took business trips on it ever, and there was zero personal mileage ever, that would be a lot easier to track, because then it would just be every bit of mileage on that car and all the costs associated with the car would be deductible. Now, for most small businesses, that's not the case. We know that you're using your personal car, but occasionally you're using it for business stuff. So that's what we call a mixed use item. And because of that, there is a tracking requirement that you have to fulfill if you're going to take a deduction for your business mileage. Now, a lot of people are kind of intimidated by this and they just don't bother doing it. And so they're not allowed to take this deduction. But the cool thing is the mileage deduction is awesome. It's really, really big. So let's talk about that. There's two different ways that you can take a mileage deduction. You can either use what's called the actual method, actual expense method, or what's called the mileage method. I am here to tell you that for most people, like I've been doing taxes for many years, and I've only ever had one client in the thousands of people whose taxes I've done, whoever came out better using the actual method versus the mileage method. So I have a strong preference for the mileage method. It's probably a bigger deduction for you. So here's how the two methods work. Actual expenses goes like this. If you take the actual expense method, you're going to track all the actual expenses for your car, right? And we know that this car is both used for personal and for business. So you're tracking everything, your new tires, your repairs, your oil changes. Yes, of course, your gas. So you're tracking all of these things, and you still actually have to record your odometer at the beginning and end of the year. And you still have to record how many miles were business miles. Remember, that doesn't include your commute. It's only additional miles. So, and then what we do is we add up all those actual expenses and we look at what the ratio is of your business miles to total miles that you drove over the course of the year on that car. And that percentage is the percentage of your actual expenses that you get to take as a business deduction. So let's say I put 10,000 miles on my car and 3,000 of those miles were business miles, then I get to take 30% of all my actual car expenses, 30% of my oil changes, tires, repairs, et cetera, and insurance. Let's not forget that. Okay, that's how the actual expense method works. So what's interesting is you actually still have to track your mileage with that one. So you kind of, no matter what you do, you kind of have to know how many miles you drove for business. Now, the mileage method is pretty interesting. The mileage method you don't have to track all those things. So you do not have to keep receipts for gas, repairs, insurance, et cetera, et cetera. The mileage method is a standard amount dictated by the IRS every single year. So it will change according to gas prices. And that mileage rate is the same for every taxpayer. So you, me, your brother, et cetera, we all get the same rate. Now, what's interesting here is a lot of people I work with, if you're kind of a fuel conscious person, you drive a smaller or more gas efficient car, the funky thing about the mileage rate is that it is one of the very few areas in the tax code where you might actually get a bigger tax deduction than what you actually spent. This is like rare tax gold for you, because that mileage rate is actually based on the average US fleet vehicle. And if you think about that, that's usually a pretty big car. It might be like a mid-sized truck, actually. So if you have a car that's not average, it's below average in its use of gas, you're probably getting a pretty good deal using the mileage method. So that's really cool. It's also cool that you don't need receipts for the mileage method. What you do need is a mileage log. So that is a requirement for taking this deduction. But before you run away screaming and decide that that's too intimidating or annoying for you, I just want to remind you, we're in the days of apps. And so there's lots of apps that will help you with this and that are actually pretty awesome. So one that I like is Mile IQ. I don't even have an affiliate link for them anymore. I'm not earning anything from telling you this. It's just the one that I use and I like. There's lots of other ones out there. I think QuickBooks has one that attaches to QuickBooks software. It does tend to eat your battery a little bit, but there's lots of, so you can go do your own research. You can go to MileIQ directly, but you can download a mileage app onto your phone. And the cool thing is the way that MileIQ works is that it has the like geo tracker going on the phone. And anytime your phone is traveling more than 5 miles per hour, it assumes you're driving. So now it starts recording that. So you don't have to remember to start your mileage tracker and to turn it off, right? So you bypass the one thing that's the most irritating about tracking mileage, right? Because it's automated. And then you just create a, weekly, bi-weekly habit for yourself of going through all the miles that got tracked on all the trips that got tracked on your mileage tracker, and you're swiping left or swiping right to say, this was business, this was not business, right? So you're just sorting them, and that's all you have to do. You have to sort the business from the personal, okay? Because you're definitely only allowed to take the miles that are business miles. Again, not a commute and not any grocery trips, childcare runs, things like that, just your business miles. So it's a really good deal. And you get this set standard rate that goes usually up every year. And it's very, very generous. A lot of us don't actually know how much money it costs to own and operate a car. It's actually more expensive than you probably realize. It's not just gas, it's insurance, it's repairs, it's tires, oil changes, maintenance, all that stuff is actually included in that mileage rate. So that's really, really key for you to know. So I have a couple tips for you. And actually, I have a little bit of news about the mileage rate for 2022. I'm recording this in July, and amazingly, the IRS just announced a rate change mid-year for the mileage method. This has never happened before that I'm aware of. I could be wrong, but usually it's just one rate per year. This year, effective July 1st, so for the second half of 2022, there's actually a new and increased mileage rate. It was in the beginning half of the year, the mileage rate was 58.5 cents per mile. And it's now gone up 4 cents a mile to 62.5 cents a mile. So if you drive 100 miles to go have a client meeting, then that is now, instead of a $58.50 deduction, that's now a $62.50 deduction. If you just think of how many meetings you have, how many site visits, et cetera, those are going to probably add up to a couple thousand per year. So that's really a lot of money that you get back for tracking this. Okay, so let me give you some really simple, actionable tips for you to get started tracking your business mileage. First of all, download an app. I like MyLikeU, but there are others. So if you want to look around and shop around, read the reviews, that's fine. But download a mileage app. That's your first step. Second, I highly recommend, because no matter what method you use, you actually need a full total of the mileage that you drove for the whole year on that car, in addition to the portion of that that was business mileage versus personal. So what I recommend to get that number, and it's not that hard, set a calendar alarm for yourself for January 1st, make it recurring every single year. And every single January 1st, I want you to go out and just record your odometer. That's it. Snap a phone picture, put the number in your notes app on your phone, whatever it is, just a simple record what it is. Now, the cool thing is, as long as you keep doing that every January 1st, you have both a starting mileage for this year and you have your ending mileage number for next year. So isn't that cool? So because you have that every January 1st, you have your total miles per year. Important to note that if you sell that car, you are going to need to record the mileage, record that odometer before you sell it. And of course, if you get a new car, track the mileage whenever you get the new car, at the moment that you get it, so that you have the mid-year thing, where you traded it off. I have seen people lose their mileage deduction because they bought a new car mid-year and they didn't track that. Okay, so download your app, make a recurring calendar date to check your odometer every January 1st. And that's pretty much it. That's really all you need to do in order to get that awesome mileage deduction. Oh, and the last thing I want to tell you about is parking and tolls actually don't have to get lumped in to your mileage. So even if you're doing the mileage method, and remember I said if you're doing mileage method instead of the actual expense method, you don't have to keep receipts for every individual purchase related to your car. You just have to track mileage and that's it. But parking and tolls is something you should still track because that is actually a separate and additional deduction. So don't miss that because that's just a little bit more money that you can get out of your tax return. All right. I hope that has been super helpful for you. What I want you to do is if you want a full deductions guide, I have a visual guide to your tax deductions available online. And so if you want to look up the rules, if you want to reconfirm the rules for yourself for this, you can find that guide. It's beautiful, colorful. It's a one-page referral resource. You can just print it out, put it up above your desk where you do your bookkeeping, and you have it to refer to all year long. So you can get that guide at sunlighttax.com/deductions guide. And if you found this episode helpful, subscribe to the show, leave a review. That really helps other people find the show. And if it could help a friend, share the episode with a friend. Thank you all so much for joining me, and I'll see you next time.